Boom.
Boom.
We
That
are
seems so short this time.
Yeah, I love it. Get to the point right away. So welcome everybody. Rob here with John and our special guest Trevor, who I'm about to introduce. Just want to let everybody know we're switching over to Thursdays to do these at noon Eastern Standard Time, and we've been doing them on Wednesdays. It's my fault. I'm down in Costa Rica, and I have this meeting on Wednesdays that I go to, and I asked John if he was cool with that, and he says it's all good by him. So you guys are in minus 30 below zero weather, and I'm up here, down here. Don't hate me, please. That's why I'm wearing a tank top, so it's nice and warm and sunny. I'm here for a little while, and I'm actually trying to build a business down here too. But I'm going to introduce Trevor real quick. First thing I want to do is I want to show you guys something. I got to show you this. This is exciting. And I want to also mention that Trevor asked me questions beforehand, like many of our guests often will ask, well, what do you want to talk about? And what's your audience like? So you can see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brownsville photographer wins Provincial Photographic Artist of the Year award. So this is like amazing CTV news down in London, Ontario. Amazing coverage. I love this kind of stuff. I saw somewhere, John or Trevor, you had won this award, and that's why I reached out to you. And it's a major award. And I should put the link inside the chat. I'll do that in a minute. So it says here, Trevor's from Brownsville, Ontario, has been awarded the Photographic Artist of the Year, the Professional Photographers of Canada 2021 Ontario competition. That's amazing. So Pottelberg has, am I saying your last name correcto?
You are,
Okay,
yes.
Although, should we be calling him Trevor or should we call him Professor Teapot? You can explain that as we go on.
You guys did some digging, yeah.
I did some digging.
I like Professor T. Or is it Teapot?
Mm-hmm. It's Teapot. He'll explain it, I'm sure, in a second when he gets to it.
So he's been awarded. Okay, hold on. I've always been in love with nature, wildlife, and landscapes. And you said you were a wedding photographer, and it got to be too much. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you about that later on. So we'll talk to you briefly about your wedding photography experiences. Okay. And you're also a professor at in London, Ontario, at Fanshawe, where I coincidentally attended Fanshawe in 1977.
Very cool.
My joke was for 45 minutes. I went for one semester, but the math and physics was way over my head, so I couldn't get proud. So I got to show you guys this. I think this is correct. Can you see that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Is that beautiful downtown Brownsville where you're from?
That is the middle of the town. Yes, that's our four-way stop. Our only four-way stop.
Is that where you're at right now?
I'm just down the road from there. So yeah, okay. If you see where it says Brownsville Community Center.
Yep.
That's where I am, pretty much right beside that to the south.
Okay. Yeah. Now we're talking a small community in South Central Ontario, not too far from London, where Fanshawe is. And actually, my whole family lives in London, so I'm very familiar with it.
So now everybody knows where he lives. So let's all go and bombard his house.
Yep. There we go. Barbecue at Trevor's place, or Professor Teapot.
Minus 30-degree barbecue.
So,
true.
Anyways, I want to congratulate you, Trevor, on your accomplishment. That must have been very, very exciting. And I read the article, which I'm going to put in the links so that you guys can read it and sort of get a sense of where Trevor is. But before we dig into anything, I want to ask you briefly, just the quick overview. Give us the life story. What got you into photography and up till now, and kids, family, and all that stuff, if you don't mind, Trevor. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. So my entire life has been based around nature, wildlife, the great outdoors. So since I can remember, 3 years old, just loving animals, loving, if I had a cat or if I had a wild animal beside me, I was happy, right? Mm-hmm. And so growing up, I did a lot of fishing in this area, a lot of hiking in the area, just kind of exploring, being out in the outdoors. And so I kind of knew my path moving forward in life was going to be something to do with animals. And I pulled out this drawing that I had from back like kindergarten time. And the teacher had asked us, and they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so in this drawing, you can see all these little animals, and I'm in a forest there, and I'm dressed as, it looks like a little doctor, but I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I wanted to work with animals, right?
Oh, okay.
I forgot all about that until my mom pulled it out, and she says, here's some stuff from your childhood. Check it out. And so anyhow, as the years progressed, got more and more into the outdoors and fishing and so on. And as I got into the high school years, I really, really started leaning towards going into the Fish and Wildlife program. So in Ontario there at Sir Sandford College, they have a Fish and Wildlife program where you can get into there and you can move forward in any direction that you wanted. But I really wanted to be something to do with, maybe a game warden or into that type of thing, right? And so when I talked to the high school counselor and I said, this is what I want to do, and she says, you know what, there's very, very little jobs. You're not going to get in there, unfortunately, and she says, you're going to have to pick another path. And I was crushed, right? That's what I wanted to do. And so eventually I just decided, you know what else could I do where I could kind of, work with nature, work with animals and so on. And I thought, well, I could photograph them and kind of document them in that way. And that's kind of the reason that I really got into photography is, you aspire to be a photographer for National Geographic, right? That's kind of that's where I thought I was headed.
And the rest is history. So you didn't take that course in Fish and Wildlife, or did you?
I didn't take the course. No. I was going to, and I decided, you know what, if there's going to be no jobs, I've got to look somewhere else, and really what got me into photography, and I'll try to explain this to you real quick, is as I was fishing, I would quite often be around this area where there was a waterfall, and migrating fish would be coming upstream and trying to jump over the waterfall. And I thought, that's really cool. I wonder if I could ever catch that on film. So I when right around the time I was about 13 or 14, parents took me to a camera store, and we picked up a little Kodak point and shoot camera, had a little pop-up flash on it, loaded it with film, and I would spend hours down there, just standing in one spot and have my hand on the shutter and wait. And as soon as that trout would jump out of the falls, I'd try to snap a shot of it. And I went through rolls and rolls of film, right? And but finally I captured a few. And as I captured them, I looked at it, and I was just something about that. I just looked and I went, man, this is awesome. I want to do this, And I think that's what kind of got me moving forward with things and just wanting to capture and share that with people, for sure.
That's really cool. So there's a connection there. That's why I like asking this question. It's like when Steve Jobs talks about what got him into he talks about connecting the dots, and you look back and you go, well, this happened, that happened, but it all underscores the idea that you're really passionate about animals and photography. So I'm going to guess that your challenge is the same. Yeah. When you were told there were no jobs, no opportunities, no careers in fish and wildlife, someone could equally, and I was told the same thing, by the way, when I was 19 and I decided to go to Fanshawe, they told me there's no jobs in photography. And I think that's more true nowadays than ever before. So obviously you got into wedding photography. I want to talk a little bit about that and what was that like for you, but I'd like to open up the door to where you see sort of, if there's any sort of marketing or business or ventures or projects and that you're obviously very passionate about and to do with fish and wildlife and all of that stuff, and sort of what your plans, hopes, and aspirations are. But I'm thinking too, John, do you have access to are the images posted somewhere, Trevor, that you had entered into the competition?
I would think most of them are probably either on Instagram or on my website, for sure.
Okay. Cool. Maybe we'll go through some of those and show those.
I got your website open, so I can try and take a look.
So we'll go there in a minute, and if we can, we'll talk about some of those images. So I know I was just throwing a lot at you just right now. And by the way, I mentioned that, okay, when people say, what's your audience? Like, well, I think the most important element is that we're all interested in photography.
That's right.
I will learn something. I'm a people photographer. I will learn from you either through technical something. I'll at least learn, man, you got to be patient.
Oh, right. Definitely. I don't have the patience to do landscape. That's for sure.
Well, I can learn that, right? I say, well, look at this guy. I'm having a hard time with an 18-month-old. I can learn patience and all the other stuff. So we have a common denominator, which is the love of photography and what have you. So,
that's right.
And I think that's what most people are going to understand, and we can all derive many lessons. So anyway,
that patience isn't just like the shooting of it. I mean, you got to go back to the same place over and over, studying it, where the light hits at what time of day. You got to see, and then you finally get, okay, I'm going to go shoot it that day, and then it rains or something, and you're like,
right.
oh. So I mean, that patience, it could take you months before you get that shot.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of scouting that's involved with it, especially with the landscape end of things. You might be driving, like John said, you're driving around the countryside and you're just trying to look for something really cool. It might be a single tree out in the field or an old barn or whatever it may be, but you're always looking for the actual subject matter and then trying to think, when could I shoot that? When's the light going to be really cool on that? Or what time of year is this going to look cool at? And I might put that in the back of my mind, and 2 years later, I'm driving around, I'm thinking, conditions are amazing right now, but where could I go? And I think, oh, I remember that tree that I passed, on such and such a road. I've got to get back to that tree. And I actually did that days ago, in the snowstorm. And I just remember there's this cool, very symmetrical tree sitting out in the middle of a field, no other trees around it. And it's just snowing like a bitch. You can't see anything behind it. And so it's kind of just silhouetted there against this white backdrop. And so I drove through the storm, told my wife I was staying home that day, of course, being safe. Got out in the car, drove almost to London from my place, found that tree, pulled over on the side of the road, shot from my car, and I got a really cool shot in the snow. So yeah, you definitely you're constantly scouting, always looking, and especially in the area that I live, like you pulled up on the map there, we're just in the middle of nowhere. There's no big lakes, there's no mountains, there's no nothing. It's just open fields, and so you really got to work hard, to find the subject matter for sure.
I don't know. I like that landscape because since the 80s, I've been driving to London several times a year, and I started decades ago taking back roads. And I just always felt, I don't know, just thought it was just something about it.
It does feel like home, right?
Like
it's I guess when you grow up around this area and you're used to seeing it every day, it feels like home. But yet you've seen it every day. So after a while, I think a lot of the people around the area, they just drive by things because they don't see it. They just kind of look, I'll wait till I go on my trip to find something really beautiful to photograph, right?
Well, you're very prolific. Hopefully we get to show up some of the images. I went through your entire website and I'm like, oh man, look at the categories and look at the stuff he's got. I mean, you don't just pick a category, you pick a category and you go deep into it. So we're going to hopefully talk about that in a minute. Sure. I want one question before we get back to this topic. You said you do a lot of scouting. Never occurred to me that was a thing. Do you have some sort of a journal where you write that stuff down? Okay, here's the location, the Smith and Brownsville corner, blah, 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 greenhouse with the white shutters.
Yeah, I do keep a little journal. And then, of course, with technology and having our iPhones on us, you can pull up the notes section and type it in. I do remember a lot, which is surprising because, I forget to tie up my shoes in the morning, but yet I can remember, a tree that I found, 10 years ago. And my wife is always joking about that. She says, you can't remember, I'll ask you, do you remember that time we went out on that date and did this and this? And I'll say, honestly, I don't, and she'll say, but you remembered that, that tree that you found or that fish you caught years ago. But no, I do keep a journal quite often, especially if it's something where I'm just going on a random back road and I don't even know where I am. I'm just kind of listening to the GPS. And if I find a really cool thing, I'll jot it down, or I'll even snap a shot with my cell phone because it's got the GPS coordinates tagged to it. You can load that into something like Lightroom, and Lightroom's got a built-in map that you could actually put that picture in there and it would show you right on the map where you were. So it's a pretty cool little tip to use. Yeah,
that's pretty exciting. Let's touch on weddings really quick, and then we'll get into some of your images. How's that sound?
Sure. Sounds good.
You were obviously a wedding photographer, and by the way, are you working full-time, part-time at Fanshawe still, or do you have another job? Or
so I work there. I'm between part-time and full-time. I'm called partial load, and so you're there, 3 days a week type of thing. With COVID, of course, I've been teaching from home the last couple of years, which has been great. But I'm usually there in a typical year about 2 to 3 times a week, and then I spend my other time out doing this photography. So yeah.
Does your wife help you out, or does she have a real job?
So she has a real job. Backstory, I met her actually at Fanshawe when we went through the photography program. So
You took the program. Well, that's obvious. I mean,
yeah.
I would imagine.
So we both met in the program, and she was in photography at the time. I was in photography, and I was about a year ahead of her. And so when we got out of school, the first thing that people would ask me when they saw me on the street, "You've now graduated. What are you going to do? Like, what are you photographing?" And I said, "Well, I really, really love nature. I'm thinking kind of going that direction." And they're like, "Yeah, but how are you going to make money at that?" And they were true. They were exactly right when they said that. But one of my friends came up to me that was getting married at the time, and she says, "You're doing my wedding." And it wasn't, "Can you shoot my wedding?" She says, "You're doing my wedding." And I said, I don't want to shoot weddings. I did portraits in Fanshawe, but portraits wasn't my thing. I wasn't really into it. I did it because we had to for projects and so on, but I just wasn't able to get over that hump, And so anyways, long story short, she just said, "You're shooting my wedding." And I reluctantly went and shot it. And I was shooting on a Hasselblad camera rented from college at the time, all film. And I think I charged her about $300 to shoot her wedding. Yeah. And we ended up shooting over about 100 weddings plus over a 10-year period afterwards, even though I said I would never get into that. So my wife was working with me, and she would be kind of the backup shooter. I'd kind of do the primary work, and then she'd be off to the side shooting, but she was also very detail oriented, and she would go in and set when we got our group set up, and she would do all the setups and bride's dress and all that type of thing. So we worked very well together. There were times where we almost killed each other, and we would put on that brave smile until you got back in the car to travel to another location. And then that's where you're just like, "Oh my God," and you're back and forth arguing. You get out of the car and the smile's back on, and you put forth the effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you sold your soul to the devil, and you did it for the money.
Essentially, yeah. To be truthful, I enjoyed meeting the people, and I enjoyed the rush of the weddings, and getting in there and being able to jump from place to place to place and be able to document the day and come up with really cool ideas as you're going, and being in a small area, we would photograph many of the same couples. So you might photograph one wedding, and then you're photographing the friend's wedding, the next year, and then the next year you're photographing their friend's wedding, and you're seeing more and more people show up in the wedding parties, from previous weddings. And so it kind of became like a big family. Everybody kind of got to know each other. We got comfortable with the bride and groom. And it was a good gig for a long time, and it brought in a lot of extra income. My wife is the social butterfly. She's the one that would love to go to the wedding. She should still love to do it now. But unfortunately, we got to the point where, with my health issues, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but my health issues got into the way, and it got to be more of, definitely a job and more of a pain to try to work around my health issues in the wedding, and, still trying to be in a very good mood, as you're shooting throughout the day, even though you don't feel good at all, and that really made things difficult towards the end. So I finally had to make that decision, back around 14 or 15, just that's it. Yeah.
That's it. Well, it's interesting how you pivoted, but you were in an ideal situation to pivot. Were you starting to teach at Fanshawe around the same time, or did that come later or before?
So I started teaching at Fanshawe around 2008.
Okay.
And at that time, I was still photographing weddings, and we were photographing families on the side too, and kids, that type of stuff. And whenever I would have a chance, if I had any free time, I'd still be out kind of dabbling in doing some photography of wildlife and landscapes, and but it was just kind of messing around when I had the chance, But yeah, I was still doing that at the time I started teaching, and that transition kind of happened as I was teaching.
So you sort of had teaching to fall back on. I'm sorry, I already asked you, but did you say your wife works, and what was that at?
Yes. Oh, sorry. So yeah, so she transitioned kind of out of photography at the same time that we ended weddings. She went back to school, and she actually studied in pharmacy, which kind of completely different. So she's a pharmacy technician, and she works in London. So
almost sounds like Warren and Paula. Yeah,
they did a similar thing. So she works at a pharmacy place too.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. It's just interesting the way and you've always maintained that love of wildlife and all the other scenery type photography that you do, including scuba, astro, and waves.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about some of that stuff because I'm
Sure.
fascinated with wave photography. That's a personal fascination of mine.
For sure.
John, do you have any questions before we sort of lead off into
No,
some...
I'm just listening, and I just love the picture on his website of him sitting in the water with his waders on, taking the picture. I think it's hilarious.
Oh, this one here. You know what? I'm going to show that one right now.
Yeah, that shows how much he gets right into his work. He's got the waders on right up to his chest there, and he's got his tripod right in the water, and he's shooting something.
I'm going to call that dedication.
Yeah,
There he is. That picture right there.
right there. There you go.
So
I think that's awesome.
I got a quick story for you guys about that. Let me just show you something. I don't know if you can see this. Let me hold this up here.
Okay.
Okay, you see this here?
Yeah, let me go full screen on there so everybody can see it better.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a magazine.
Nice.
That image was featured on. Okay, and that was my very first magazine cover, and that's a Hong Kong magazine. And
Cool.
so the cool thing about this though was that they contacted me and asked about my work and so on, and they wanted some pictures and a backstory and so on about my life and all that. So I did all that, sent in all the pictures. They contacted me about a week later, and they said, you know what, we like your picture so much, we're going to do an inset story, but we're also going to put you on the cover. And I thought, oh, this is going to be awesome, you know. and I said, what cover picture do you want to use? And they said, you know what, we're going to keep it a secret, and when it's done, we'll mail you out a bunch of copies of this. So the magazine comes in, that picture's on the magazine, and I'm like, that's so cool. I'm actually on the magazine. And then I started looking at it and I go, wait a minute, that's not my picture, that's my wife's picture. She took that picture of me working in water, right? So I go running upstairs and I said to her, I'm like, you're never going to believe this, Kara. I said, you got to see the picture. The magazine came in today and you got to see the picture that they used. And she's like, well, which one is it? Is one of your, you know, your waves, your landscapes, whatever. And I said, it's this one. And I turn it around, and she didn't clue in at first either. She's like, that's so cool. She goes, wait a minute. She says, didn't I take that picture of you when you were out with me? And I said, yeah. And she says, so actually, she says, that's my magazine cover. And I said, you know what? You're right. It is. So in the end, she got her first magazine cover before I did. So the cool thing is, though, on the inset of the magazine is there's the story behind, you know, my life and work and so on, and my pictures. I mean, she's got the magazine, so we both kind of got in the magazine, you know. But yeah, it was pretty funny when we realized, you know, what picture that they used in the end. So
Yeah, you think they'd use one of yours on the cover and then put that one on the inside?
that's right. Yeah,
They must have found it fascinating. I mean, possibly it's a cultural thing. If you're from far away, you look at that and you go, wow.
that's
Look at
what
this
I'm
guy.
thinking too.
This guy's like a Navy SEAL. So I got to ask you a technical. I see you were, am I right, shooting Nikon, and you made the transition over to the greatest camera system in the whole wide world, Sony, or am I wrong there?
You're very close. I was a Canon shooter, and I transitioned
Yeah.
to Sony.
That looks like a Nikon from here. Are you? Is that a? I noticed you got a. I saw another picture. It looked like you had a super wide G Master. I want to talk about that. But this filter system, is that a neutral density in there?
Yeah. So at the time that I was shooting a lot of landscapes, and I would put in neutral density filters or graduated neutral density filters, you know, especially if I was including the sky in the shots. And luckily, since switching over to Sony, I haven't had to do that since. That dynamic range in Sony is so amazing that you can pull out so much highlight and shadow detail that you just don't need that filter system anymore. So,
Cool.
but yeah, I definitely would go out all the time and shoot with my filters. You know, just have that filter on the front, pop it in there, and it really did help for sure. It kind of balanced out the foreground and the sky for sure.
What are you using? Graduated more so than neutral density, or is that a stupid question?
No, I would use neutral density once in a while if I was doing really long exposures, you know, but like shooting a waterfall or shooting a lake that has waves and so on. But most of the time, if I was doing just a wide open landscape and I just wanted to cut down that light on the sky, I would use a graduated for sure.
Nice. So you have a Sony body. Which body is that? They all look the same to me.
I sold my kidney, and I was able to finally get to the A1. So I had a couple bodies that I had been working with, and I ended up having to sell both those bodies to pay for the A1. And so I've loved it though since I got it. It's been
Why am I not familiar with the Sony A1?
I know the A7 series, but
So the A1 is now their top series. So they've got the A7 and then the A9 series, and then they came out with the A1, and it's if you check that out. It's the cool thing about it is it still retains huge megapixel size, but yet it shoots like 20 frames per second, and that's what's actually opened up my world of wildlife. That was what changed things about a year ago for me.
Sony Alpha 1 A. Oh, man, I don't know why.
Yeah, it'd be Alpha 1, yeah.
Yep, that's the one.
Don't know why I'm not familiar. I usually try and plug into. See, I shoot with the A7R2.
And that was I love that camera. The A7R2, A7R3, those were my favorite cameras. But see the price on that thing?
Yeah, and that's American because he's oh no, it's Henry.
No,
so
that's
it's Canadian.
Canadian.
Yeah, that's Canadian.
That's a lot of money. Okay,
that's moolah.
Yeah, so
that's interesting.
That was
similar to the Canon R5.
Yes, yeah. So that was definitely a hit. I had to first of all transitioning from Canon over to Sony was expensive because the Sony equipment is so much more expensive that I had to sell off a lot of my gear in order to purchase back some of the gear that I had when I had Canon.
Cool.
But yeah, it's I'm getting there. I've got a 400, a used 400 2.8 on the way in the next week or so, and that's been kind of a dream lens between that one and the 600.
How much is that one?
That one new is about I think it's almost $18,000. Like it's ridiculous, right?
You buy a car for the same price.
Exactly.
I know, that's crazy.
So I was able to find a really good deal on a used one, and again, just trying to build up that money and be able to pay for that. But with what I'm doing, a lot of, especially with the wildlife and a lot of low light situations, I'm finding that the lens that I'm currently using, which is a 200 to 600, is really nice when you have the right lighting conditions. But as soon as you get into really low light conditions, and that's typically when you're photographing the wildlife, it's tough. You're cranked up over 10,000 ISO trying to take a shot of something or higher.
So you really value top quality glass.
Now, when you first transferred over to Sony with the A7R2 or whatever it was, did you, I guess, still had a lot of your Canon gear at the time? Did you just get the adapter to use your Canon lenses on there? Because I know that some people said when they first did that, you could get the adapter, but stuff like your autofocus wouldn't work or things like that. Whereas on the R series of Canons, you can get the adapter and all your EF lenses will still fit and work perfectly fine.
That's right. Yeah. So when I first did the transition over, I did buy one of the adapters, and I was able to, use all my Canon gear. And you know what? It wasn't bad. Speed was a little bit compromised, but nothing major. And but after a while, I started finding that it was becoming a bit of an issue, that I wanted a little bit more pop, a little more speed to the autofocus, and even just the overall clarity. There was a little bit of loss, just like if you're using an extender on, a long telephoto.
Right.
But yeah, it definitely helps when you first move over that you can do that. And then once you start to kind of build up some cash flow, or maybe you're selling off other equipment, then you can kind of invest in the Sony gear for sure. But I did sell off a lot of Canon equipment, in order to be able to buy a few of the Sony lenses.
That's insane. Yeah. So you have a wide angle G Master. Which one was that?
So the current one I have is the 12 to 24.
Okay.
I was shooting 16 to 35, and then transition.
That's the one I have. So
okay, yeah, and it's a beautiful lens.
I use it for weddings.
Yep.
Commercial.
Yep.
But a different application than you. So, but I've seen the 12 to 25. You said
12 to 24. Is
that a 2.8?
It is. Yeah.
Is it? It's and they're giving it away for free almost, right?
Oh, for sure. Cheap. Yeah. The one thing about that though, the front of it is kind of bulbous, like it sticks out. And so if you ever want to get into that whole filter system again, you can't do that unless they've come out with some sort of an adapter where it sticks out a little further. But yeah, you kind of get away from putting on even like a polarizer or a UV filter. You wouldn't be able to screw on the front.
Okay, well, I want to ask you about that in a second.
Sure.
But in application specifically lenses to different types of the photography that you're doing. So you have a 12 to 24. You have a 400 2.8 coming in, of which you've given your kidney and your left eyeball to pay for. What other lenses are essential, or that you own, or you feel like I gotta have these?
I miss my 24 to 70. So I had
Really?
because that was the middle range, and that was great for, shooting portraits and weddings and so on. But I miss that range because I kind of have that super wide look, and then I have the telephoto look, but I have nothing in between right now. And so when I sold off the 24-70 at the time, I wasn't using it. And then I thought, oh, I'm not going to need this. And of course, within a week, you're wanting it back. And so I just found that where I'm standing, if I'm trying to get a really wide angle shot, and then there's something, maybe a lighthouse in the background that I'm trying to get a little closer to, if I physically can't walk to it, I would love to have that range between 24 and 70 where I could still get a lot of the scene, but more close up on the subject. So I do miss that one, and that would be a good one to have if somebody was getting into this.
Well, you're just going to have to go buy one. That's all. We grant you permission.
I have no more kidneys, so I give up the last one. I'm done. So
tell your wife, John and Rob said it was perfectly okay and worth every penny to go buy a 24-70. So you got the long lens and the wide lens, and just you're doing pretty good with those. I mean, that's going to really get you in 98% of the time.
That's right. Yeah, I've kind of narrowed down because over the years I've gone through so many different lenses, and I might use them for a year or so and then figure, maybe I should try this out and this out. And so I've gone through a lot of them, but I've got it narrowed down now where I know that my 12-24 is great for my landscapes, and then the longer lens for wildlife and even the waves too. I use the long lens for the waves, and it works out. So I'm really, at this point anyways, I'm comfortable with the two lenses.
So did you get the 2.8400, or is it coming? I can't remember what you said about that.
So that one is coming about, I'm guessing about a week or so from now.
Cool.
It was actually a photographer that lived in Ontario, and he's moved out east. Right. And we kind of got talking, and what's going to happen is he's going to ship me his, and he's actually taking my 200-600, which will help a little bit with cost. Nice. And then we'll see how things go and progress this spring. I think it's going to be great with all the, the new wildlife and the babies that start happening around, between May and June. I think it's really, really going to up my game for sure. Yeah.
So bizarre to hear that. I mean, there's one thing that nobody else can, they don't know the excitement of like, oh, I'm getting a new lens. My dream lens is coming in any day now.
That's right.
But this idea that, the babies are coming in the spring. So, okay. Interesting. It makes sense.
Yep.
That's your world, right?
Right.
So I want to talk about making money doing what you're doing. I mean, you're so prolific, and I personally am of the attitude that you're probably going to really, really work hard at the marketing. But I think there's a pretty good market for what you got to sell if you're smart about it. I don't know what your thoughts or our feelings are about that, but maybe I'll show some of your images and we'll talk about that.
There's definitely a knack to trying to sell artwork. Transitioning from that portrait world, where you had your weddings and families and you had the repeat customers and so on, and it was a guaranteed income. You knew that something was coming in if you had booked a wedding, right, or a gig. And this is different. You put your heart and soul into this, and and post on social media and get the images out there to people, and send out emails, and maybe have a backstory about a particular photo that I just shot, and try to get the interest that way. But it really, really is hard, to sell artwork. And in the area that I live in, people would rather go to Walmart and buy, a $50 print of a beautiful, like a grizzly bear catching a trout jumping a waterfall, right? But they look at that, and then they look at my work, and they can't see the difference between the two, in that, all the time and effort, and the passion that goes into it. They don't see any of that. They just see the two pictures, and they see mine priced, at $500, and they see $50 at Walmart, and they think, well, why would I buy yours when I can just go to Walmart? And that's kind of the mindset in the area that I live. And so it's kind of frustrating that way. And so I've been trying to get my work out there so that it's out more into the bigger cities, or in the people who maybe appreciate, the art and the work that goes into it, and then have the money, and money's not an object for them. They just want that artwork, knowing, maybe the backstory and the history behind that piece. So I'm definitely always kind of struggling with that, and juggling different ideas for marketing, and how can I get my work out there, and what can I do. And art shows do help. If you have, a gallery showing and you have people come to that gallery and they get to see your artwork in person versus just seeing it online, it definitely does help. But again, it's one of those things where I think I need to transition more into a larger market versus this area where we live, for sure.
Well, there's a lot of money in Southern Ontario. There's a lot of money. So I just want to throw stuff out there.
Sure.
Peter Lick, the scenic photographer.
Yes.
Do you know Darren Wiggett from out Calgary way?
I know the name for sure. And if I saw his work, I probably would be familiar with it.
He does a lot of long exposure stuff, mostly scenics, and he's amazing. Okay, I just mentioned those two, and there's a guy from Hawaii who does wave photography who I started following years ago, whose name I can't remember, but he's got an entire gallery and he sells T-shirts and coffee mugs and everything else. I like to find creative ways to market this stuff, and I think that there's a market, and I think it's a challenge, but it's totally doable to go into something like this and say, hey, I am the preeminent photographer artist who creates this stuff in my area and markets at a very respectable price, meaning expensive. And it's artwork for your home, whatnot. So a lot of this stuff would have meaning, especially the people who are from the area. But I think of two people in particular, and neither of them are photographers. One guy, he's a black charcoal drawer because he's colorblind.
Right.
He's from Alberta. He created like a multi-million-dollar business selling drawings, and he'd go after corporations. And he would do a drawing like of a mining scene, and he'd go to the company and say, "Here, this is a really good idea to give these to your employees or for gifts at Christmas time." And he'd make these massive sales. But anyways, his name I don't know where he's at these days, but his name, his website was called Pencil Neck.
Okay.
And he was. When I went and seen him the first time I found him was like 12 years ago. I thought, this guy is doing marketing. This guy has it.
That's right.
It was like amazing. You rarely saw that. And the other guy is from New York. He's a doodler. He sells his doodles. Nothing more than doodles, but huge, huge, huge success. And it's called Gaping Void. Something to check out.
For sure.
Gaping Void and Pencil Neck, if you can find it. Look for inspiration, if I can just throw that out there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
I think you got a lot of stuff here, man. It's amazing. Yeah. So
I love his panoramic stuff because you got the star streak, or not streaks, but the stars all in the sky and the Milky Way type look. And
are you talking about the horizontal panoramics?
Or he actually, if you go up to his collections there at the top, and when the drop down menu comes, you'll see panoramic.
Let's talk about that.
And there then like the middle one there, and just the way the sky is, and that is just gorgeous.
And so most of the work that I do like that is down around Lake Erie shoreline, and a lot of people look at that and they say, "But you're down in Southwestern Ontario. There's so much light pollution. How are you doing this?" And obviously, the light pollution is there. You can see on the horizon, and that what you're seeing is actually the States. So across the lake, and you would think that there's no way that that's gonna, from that far away, is actually gonna come into play and into your photo, but it actually is. So, that's down around Ohio area, and so that light pollution, I just use that to my advantage, and I just say, instead of just being a completely black horizon, it looks like it's on fire, and then people will say, well, how did you do that at sunrise or sunset and then get the stars in there? That's all photoshopped. And then I explain to them that that's lights, that's just artificial lights coming from a totally different country.
Is that like multiple exposure there, or
that one? No, that's all with the Sony camera. Excuse me, is one exposure. But what I have to do with that type of thing with a pano is, depending on the time of year, I actually learned that the Milky Way changes behavior. So where you're seeing it right now, that's going like a rainbow. If you were to look at that in October, the Milky Way would be straight up and down.
Oh, really?
The only way to get that rainbow is to shoot between February and about maybe May. You can get that, and you're doing if you can get it in this particular time frame, then you're probably doing about 10 shots where you're just setting it up, starting over to your left, and turn your camera vertically and just take a shot, work yourself all the way around, and then all those shots get stitched together. But you have to be fairly quick at it because we're moving, so the stars are going to appear as footballs instead of pinpoint sharp points of light. So what you're gonna have to do in that case, and that's why the 12 to 24 comes in handy. You actually shoot wide open, so you might shoot at f2.8 and try to get a faster shutter speed, and you still might be shooting for 10 or 15 seconds in one exposure, and then moving, doing another 10, 15, and so on. But there's still not enough gap in there that the computer can't kind of align and figure it out. So it works great, you know, and then you end up with this result. So we can get that in this area. Definitely if you're going more north of here, like Sudbury, North Bay, you know, anywhere up cottage country area, you definitely have more of a beautiful night sky and more crystal clear look than you do here. But you know, you can still get it for sure.
Especially if you're in Petawawa, because they still use candles and whale oil to light the night.
I've heard that. Actually, you know, it's,
right, John?
Of course.
I was going to tell you, John, too. Petawawa. You said Petawawa or Pembroke?
Yes, that's where I am, Petawawa.
My brother lives in Deep River.
Yep, that's about 20 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah, and when I couldn't believe it, you know, just such a small world, you know, and I've been up there many times to visit, and going down to the Ottawa River at night is just, it's amazing just to look up and, you know.
Oh, definitely. Right at the marina and Deep River is gorgeous. I actually did a wedding right on that thing when I was doing weddings. I haven't done weddings in years, but when I was, we had about 2 or 3 weddings where we actually shot right at the marina there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
it's beautiful for sure. Yeah, I've shot.
You'll definitely have to come by this way next time you visit your brother, and you have to come to the studio for coffee or something.
Sure. Yeah, you're not far at all.
Nope.
This is a stunning image. This is not a pano. This is, or is it
a one shot? Yeah.
And you got the Milky Way angled a little bit differently. A different time of year, I would imagine.
So that one there, that would actually be very similar time of year, but that's the bright part of the Milky Way.
Okay.
And so if you were to turn a little bit to your left, a little bit more to your left, and so on, that would be where the arc curves.
Okay.
So that kind of starts from, you know, maybe a south or southwest angle, and then goes all the way across to the north. But that's one of those ones there with the church where it was a shot where I was coming back from shooting pictures at the lake, taking back roads, and just happened to find this old schoolhouse, and then tried to remember it, and thought maybe I could go back in the spring sometime on a clear night and see if I can get the Milky Way coming right into that church.
That's amazing. So it's basically part of the Milky Way. So it's like this section here.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So this panoramic is pretty wide.
It is. That's going from north to south, even though it doesn't look like it. But that's how far that's going.
That's amazing. That's why it's about 180 degrees almost.
That's right. Yep.
That's awesome.
I would have never known that. I would have assumed that this is one wide angle lens, and who knew? So.
Yeah, so it's very cool. You learn a lot being out there. Like, I didn't know anything about the stars, and I mean, still don't know a lot about the stars, but you do learn a lot of things just being out there at night and shooting, and then being able to figure out where that Milky Way is. Because as I mentioned, it goes from horizontal to vertical, but it also shifts over the year too. So it doesn't always come up in the exact same spot, you know. So you have to kind of learn where it's going to be at certain times of year and so on.
Same area, more or less?
Yep, same area, just different time of year. And you can see how it's starting to turn, and it's going a little more, not quite straight up and down, and then 2 months after that would be straight up and down.
Okay, cool. What about underwater photography? You're obviously a scuba diver.
Well, I started getting into some underwater stuff, and I wanted to actually go and get my scuba license, but I found out that I have one ear that won't unplug. And so when you go down and you're trying to equalize the pressure in your ears, when I hold my nose and I try to blow, I can only get the one ear to kind of balance out. And so unfortunately I can't go down deep because it's just so much pressure on my ear that I have to come right back up. So until I can get that fixed, which it's one of those things that they said probably is just, you've got it and you're not going to get rid of it. So I kind of had to resort to just doing more scuba or snorkeling, more so scuba, like deep scuba. But I found in our area, like, we don't have a lot of clear water, you know, even up north it's clear, but then it's kind of tea stained, but down here it's just kind of muddy. And so you really got to look for certain areas that are fairly clear to be able to get under the water.
I love snorkeling myself, and I'm a scuba diver.
Oh, very cool.
I've even tried free diving, and I've always felt that, to me, snorkeling is just as much fun and exciting as scuba diving. So you can get a lot done with scuba diving. Can I ask you what housing and camera you're using for?
Yeah, so I actually am able to take my A1 camera, the Sony we were just talking about, and put it inside of a housing.
Mhm.
And that housing is just it's like a third-party company that makes it. It's a Chinese knockoff almost. I guess you could look at it that way. And this is the third one that I've had though, and I can get you the name. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's about a third of the price of what you would pay for most of the name
Okay.
brand ones here. I've never had a problem with leakage.
Uh-huh.
And it allows me to access all the buttons that I need to access, and opens up a whole new world, that a lot of people will never get to see. So, like you said,
Yeah.
just it's amazing when you just go under the water, even here, without going down, to the islands or anywhere. It's just looking under the water and seeing all this life that's there that you just don't realize when you're on top of the water, right?
Yeah, I find it fascinating.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau.
You're almost
These rays were probably enhanced, but all these rays in your underwater shots, these are all natural, I'd imagine, or did you add any in Photoshop?
Nope. Every one of the rays you see there are natural. You get under the water and and that's what blew me away too. I look at it and I'm thinking, oh my God, this looks Photoshopped. I haven't even taken the picture and it just looks like somebody's added this in, but it just the strength of the rays too, that are coming down. They're just, sometimes they're blown out because they're just so strong, they kind of take away from the subject matter, but yeah, it's really beautiful.
Can I ask what you paid for the housing?
That housing would be it's between $500 and $1,000 for the housing.
Okay.
And then I found, some of the ones up here, you might be more than a camera. You might be 2,500, $3,000 and up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I bought a housing from a company, Mosaic, Mozaic or something like that, for my Sony. It doesn't have autofocus. I have to pre-focus.
Okay.
I think I paid $1,600 or something like that.
Yep.
I find it cumbersome, and I did it to try and get into wave photography, and it's just sitting there at home. It's like
they are very cumbersome in the hands, right? Like you have to have large hands to even try to hold on to them. But luckily for water, it's a little more buoyant, right? So
yeah,
it's easier. But that company that we were just talking about just came to me. It was called Meikon, MEIKON.
MEIKON.
Yeah.
I'm going to write Meikon housing. Cool. There it is.
And they've got housing for pretty much every camera on the market. So the other thing they go by is the word frog is in there. I'm trying to think. I'll come up with it. It might even show up here. Something to do with frog. They've got a secondary name in there. So, but yeah, so they've got, really good stuff. And even their shipping's, it's the reasonable price for shipping, but also it's very quick. You're within a week and it's all the way over from Hong Kong.
You must get nervous when you're slapping that $9,000 body inside a housing and you're going to go submarine with it. I mean, always me nervous. I was like,
yeah, because you don't know, right? And you start going under the water, and then you're thinking, if this thing leaks, I'm done. And I've been very fortunate, that I haven't had any leakage. But also, I guess being that you're just under the surface and not all that pressure on doing a deep dive really helps. But,
yeah.
And I did find it floats, which is nice.
Yeah.
So you can, it's scary, but you can actually let go of it if you're trying to readjust some stuff, and you let go, it just sits there and floats. So
that would be so bad if it was a sinker.
Yes. I wouldn't be coming home. I wouldn't even tell the wife. I just move somewhere else. It would make life a lot easier. So
just never show up again. Send a note.
That's right.
Okay, you do wave photography, obviously, with a long lens, and I love this stuff. You think about the beauty of nature and the awesomeness and the power. I mean, this to me represents that, and scary as well when you think about the power of water and waves and the wind. So I like what, and I'm referencing that Hawaii photographer whose name I completely can't remember, but I first found this stuff and I'm like, oh, that is beautiful. I can imagine this stuff 60, 70, 80 inches, maybe on a metal print or something with beautiful modern frame in somebody's house, it would just look spectacular. So
Yeah, to fully appreciate it, right? To see all the little water droplets and have it just massive on a wall, I think it would be awesome for sure.
mhm.
It's I love doing it, and it's actually opened up a whole other avenue for days when, normally if it's storming and it's super, super windy, most people, including myself shooting landscapes, would just say, that's it. I can't shoot today. It's
Uh-huh.
cloudy, it's windy, I'm just going to stay home and I'll go out when the conditions improve. But now I'm waiting for those days where the crazier the storm, the better. That's as soon as I hear that it's going to be nuts for winds, I'm on my way to the lake. Everybody else is going for cover, and I'm like running to the lake. So
Yeah.
it's definitely opened up a whole new avenue, and I love it. I kind of get into a zone when I'm doing it, and you can have 100-kilometer-an-hour winds, and you've got just the the conditions are just brutal. You've got stuff coming like back spray coming off the lake, but you also got the sand that it's picking up at the same time. And if it's raining or snowing, it's just like little needles hitting your face. And, it's not enjoyable at all. The conditions are terrible. And it's very, very cold. And so you have to dress accordingly, obviously, but I'm pretty much covered from head to toe with gear. And I've recently even started wearing like ski goggles because it's just, I was wearing sunglasses and they weren't enough because the sand still gets in behind them, and you get done after 2 or 3 hours out there and your eyes are bloodshot from getting pounded, the whole time. So
Yeah.
it's not for everyone for sure, but the result,
Yeah.
can be definitely stunning for sure.
That actually looks like almost a sea creature coming out of the water there.
You see a lot of that. There's a lot of faces that come out and a lot of creatures and so on. And you got to think too, when these waves come up, it's a matter of, maybe a second or a second and a half and they're gone. It's just, it kind of comes up, they're gone. And so a lot of times I'll fire off, like 5 or 6 shots in a row. That way I kind of capture that peak. And, but it's very tough too, because you don't know exactly where they're going to happen. So you get really good at kind of guessing ahead of time and trying to think, okay, where is this going to happen? Because if you're zoomed in so far with that lens, it's not like you have a real wide angle view of all the waves happening. So you have to be kind of ready for that as soon as it kind of breaks out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
So you're obviously doing wildlife too. So wave, scuba, or snorkel, wave, snorkel, astro,
Landscape.
scenery, landscapes, and wildlife.
Yes.
So if you had to pick one, somebody said pick one, you can only do this, which one would it be?
You know what? It would be super, super tough call because I enjoy aspects of each one of those. But because of my love for nature and animals, I think I would just lean towards, the wildlife photography. Although I find that wildlife photography to be the most challenging out of everything that we've gone through so far. Because they're not just there. It's not like you're just driving around and, oh, there's a beautiful sunset. They
move around, and
that's right. Yeah. And you have to get to learn about each animal and their behaviors and, when they're out, and a lot of them are out, they're nocturnal, they're out at nighttime, or first thing in the morning or in the evening. But I find nature is so spooked, by something different. They're used to, hearing various bird noises and howls from coyotes and all that. Like, they're just used to that environment. But as soon as a human walks into the environment, you could step on one stick and they're all looking and they're gone, and it's so frustrating at times because you're just kind of tiptoeing, or sometimes I'm covered in complete camo gear, and it's like I'm in the army and I'm crawling across the ground trying to get this shot. And, you get so close to it and you go to put up the lens to your eye and they're gone. And it could have taken me a half an hour just to crawl 10 feet to get closer to this thing. And so you definitely have to have the dedication, drive, commitment. It's not an easy game unless you live in the city. I've talked to a lot of people that live, big cities, more so like Toronto area, and they go to their local parks. And because there's only set areas of parks, then a lot of the wildlife kind of congregate to these parks, and then they're able to just go for a walk. They don't have to dress in all the gear. And then they look up and there's this owl sitting there or deer sitting there and wanting to come up and grab an apple from your hand, So,
not the same, eh?
It's not the same. No.
And then what about like sales and marketing? Like, I know there's a lot of people that contact me in this area saying, hey, I would love to get into landscape photography and this and that, but like there's just no money in it. Like, how do you find, like, because that's all you do. You don't shoot people, you don't do weddings anymore. So is it lucrative enough to have an actual business and make a good living off of it?
I would say if you're going to do that just on your own, I know for me personally, I wouldn't be able to pay the bills just selling artwork on its own, because it has peaks and valleys, right? And you get sometimes throughout the year it's great, and then other times it's just dead. And so I find that, you know, I'm constantly looking for new ways of marketing and trying to get the word out there. And, you know, I think like Rob said earlier, maybe going that commercial route and trying to get into some of the, you know, the bigger businesses, you know, and maybe it's a boardroom, you know, and they've got a huge wall and they want to put that on there for inspiration or something, you know,
or calendars even maybe.
I did do calendars for about 6 years and did very well with them. But I still got to that point where I needed more to come in to kind of make that extra income. So I stopped for the last 2 years, and I probably will get back into it in the future, especially now that I've kind of broadened out to different, you know, things like wildlife and underwater and so on. But I find that a lot of people are very interested in the techniques, like how do you do this, or how is this done, and so on. So I'm thinking, you know, teaching these courses or teaching about this would probably be a lot more lucrative than selling the artwork. And so, I mean, if it was up to me, my dream would be to just to have a studio, have my artwork in there. People come in, you know, from all over the place and buy my artwork, and I live off of it, you know, and that would be the end goal. That would be great. But right now, at this point in my career, it's just not there yet. And I'm hoping in the future that maybe that's something that, you know, I could strive towards even as I get towards retirement age, and maybe I can have that, you know, as a side gig.
That's a really good idea as far as I'm concerned. And I personally feel to sell this stuff big as an art gallery, as a very high-end, expensive artist, you have to have massive prints. They got to walk in there and they got to be blown away. There's a lot of people with a lot of money, and they'll still buy it.
Yep.
They'll buy it. And if you said, like, I shot this deer over by the area and that's kind of on the edge of their property, it has extra meaning to them, or even if it's in the area.
That's
Definitely.
right.
Who's a photographer that shoots those elephants in black and white and the tigers? Who's that guy? I just remembered him.
I think.
And if you ever get any good pictures you shoot of an elephant or anything, you let me know, because my wife is the biggest elephants fan. We have elephant everything.
What's his
in our
name?
house.
Oh, really?
No clue.
Somebody tell me, what's that guy? I've been following him.
I know what you're like, the guy you're talking about. I just can't think of his name.
Massively successful. He gets these amazing shots. He puts a camera on a small tripod, and in the way he sees the elephants coming, and he just puts it there, and he runs over to the Jeep and he fires it remotely. He gets these spectacular images.
As if you were right there.
Is it Nick Brandt or?
Oh, anyways, it'll come to me and I'll post it in the replay of this. But I completely forgot about him, and he's like an artist who is well known in big circles now, and I believe he's got a gallery in New York or something like that.
And
I think it's totally doable. I say that you always got to start with a good product. Anything marketing wise, you got to have a good product, and you got to have a market where people are going to want to buy it. If you don't have a market, you don't have a product, really. You just got to
for sure.
But I think you're well on your way. I personally think you've got the goods and the foundation to springboard into something pretty spectacular.
If you ever have any suggestions too about, you know, what way we could go with it marketing wise, I'm definitely open to hear it.
You got a lot of stuff to work with, man, and that's where it starts. So
Definitely.
who's the light painting? John Hartman does those light paintings with the cars. He's down in Wisconsin, and he sells $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to do a light painting for these guys, these rich dudes that have these collector cars.
Wow.
There's a lot of money out there. It's what I'm saying. People want to buy something that's got meaning, and you're talking art here. This is art. So you've got the basis. It's not like we're talking to somebody who wants to and has just started to get into this kind of stuff. You're so deep into it. And it gives you credibility. And look at this image. Oh, man. See, could you imagine that? 60, 70 inches square on canvas.
And that tree there is the one that I was talking about that I revisited a couple days ago. And it's even grown since. So you see at the top left corner how it's not quite as symmetrical as the right. Now it's actually grown to the point where it almost looks like an identical flip if you go right up the middle of the tree and look on both sides.
That's cool.
I'm gonna go and recreate that shot. So I haven't even looked at it yet, but I did go back and visit that tree again for sure.
Have you ever done a seasonal series where you take one location, you shoot it at all 4 seasons at the exact same spot, and just get the 4 different looks?
I've had that idea written down for years, and I've got a couple shots where I've got 2 seasons out of it. I need to go back and get the other ones, but I have more so like fall was always popular because of the colors and so on. But but I have it in fall and winter, so I got to get back there in the spring and the summer. But yeah, I think that's cool. I've seen those before, and they put them up on the wall as either or even if it's 3 of them in a triptych on the wall, and it looks so cool because it's the exact same location, same spot.
Exactly, and you can see how different they really look at the different seasons. It's amazing.
Yeah, really cool stuff.
It's amazing stuff. So yeah, it's pretty good to see what you're doing. I'm really impressed. So what do you well, you already answered this question. I was going to say, what's your future hopes and wishes, your aspirations? You already just mentioned that. So is there anything else? Are you thinking I'm going to get back into weddings just like John?
I'm done.
I'm the same way.
I'm joking.
I think it has to do with bald people that have goatees. We just don't want to do weddings anymore.
That's right. Yeah.
You guys are brothers.
That's right. Yeah, we should just start our own little group here and say no to weddings, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think if I could do anything, it would be to travel more. And actually, I don't know if you have any time left or not, but I was going to explain to you just about my health and because that's pretty much has directed me exactly to where I'm at today. Because if I hadn't gotten sick, I think I would have been completely different path, different career, everything different. But with that, I haven't been able to travel. And so all the pictures that you see in my portfolio, I would say at least 85, if not 90% of them are all within Southern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario.
Right.
And that would be taking a line from Barrie South. I don't travel. I've been on a plane. I've been on 2 trips in my life. One of them, and this is just in the last 5 years, one of them was down to Disney World, and I went with my wife, and we both have always wanted to go there, so we decided to finally do it. And then we went out to the east coast of Canada, out to Nova Scotia for my cousin's wedding a couple of years ago. Yeah. And other than that, we haven't traveled, and it's all because of my health. So my condition is called ulcerative colitis. And a lot of people have heard more of Crohn's disease or IBS, like irritable bowel syndrome. There's all kinds of names for it, but it's a autoimmune disease. And once it hits you, you have it for life. There's no cure right now. And, you just take a lot of medications and they just kind of throw everything at you until they find something that at least calms it down. But I got it when I was 19 and I'm 45 now. So I've been battling it since even before I went to college for photography. And so my entire photographic career has actually all been, I say I've been sick my entire career. And so it's really led me into this field because I couldn't travel. And so I thought I've got to find something to do in this area, find beauty in nature and so on in this area, because with my stomach, I call it my stomach all the time, but my stomach, I don't know from day to day how it's going to be. So I could wake up today and it's great. I can wake up tomorrow and it's terrible, or I can be talking to you guys and all of a sudden it hits me and I'm like, oh God, and so you just don't know when you're going to have a bad day. And so you don't really plan ahead as to, we're going on a trip here, we're going to do this and that. Even day trips, you have to basically wait till the day of and say, are we going or not? And so anyways, that's why I've kind of based most of my portfolio on this area, because for me to travel anywhere else, it's made it really tough. But it has given me more of appreciation. Every time I go out and shoot, just the fact that I can get out and shoot for me is huge. So when I go out, as an example, like if I were to go shoot a sunrise, I need 2 to 3 hours before I can even leave the house to get my stomach settled down. So if I was going to do a sunrise, say at 7:30 in the morning, I have to think back when I'm doing my planning, what time I'm going to get up. So take 3 hours off of the sunrise time. And then I have to figure out my travel time and kind of figure out, okay, my wake up time is going to be 2 a.m. for a 7:30 a.m. sunrise because of all this, And so I think I appreciate definitely more than somebody would, where they can just roll out of bed, grab their camera and go, But it has shaped me. I mean, it's definitely made me appreciate everything more than I would have had I not gotten sick, for sure.
Yeah. So it's created challenges, but you're working through them. You're just making it happen either way. So
that's right.
That's pretty cool. You said something a second ago or a minute ago that if it wasn't for that, you'd be doing something else, which is quite possible. So it's amazing how our circumstances
That's right.
evolve into gifts, and
Mhm.
could take an adversity and it actually becomes an opportunity. So
That's right. Yeah.
it sounds to me that's the way you're looking at this.
Yeah, I've got to look at it that way, because otherwise I just drive myself nuts, because it does get me down. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's days where you don't even want to get out of bed, but most days I get up and I try to motivate myself and inspire myself to get out and say, you know what, if you got this far and you can do this, just keep going, and so. And for me, it's meditative just to get out there in nature. If I'm sitting there and there's nobody bugging me, I'm not shooting a wedding where it's just nuts, everything's going on. I'm just sitting there and everything's calm, and I'm doing my own thing. It's very meditative, and it actually, for me, helps out my condition, because I don't have to think about anything else. I'm kind of in the moment and just dealing with what's in front of me, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to send you the replay to this in case you wanted to share it with anyone, and I'll put I'm going to find those names. I'm going to put them in the description too, so that you can it might help inspire some
for sure. That'd be great.
business ideas and whatnot. So I really appreciate that you joined us and shared your information with us. I'd like to have you back.
Sure.
4 or 5 months down the road.
Sure.
And I'm glad that you're a Sony guy.
I'm still Canon, so.
Well, we got the bald thing in common, so we'll
Exactly.
Rob and I can do the Sony, and you and I.
It's coming to be a trait for when we bring guests on, because our last guest was Sal Sincata, and he's the same way. So I mean,
right? Yep.
Look,
I think Rob just goes when he. Actually, no, I got Sal, so I mean.
Yeah, I haven't cut my hair since December 3rd, 20th, and this is.
He's trying to look like us though, because he's got the goatee going, so he's trying to look like us.
I gave up on. I'm just going with the full COVID look.
You're getting there, for sure.
So, what else was I going to say about that? So I'll do that, and
I appreciate you coming on too. I learned a lot myself.
No problem. No, I appreciate you guys having me on, for sure.
We forgot some of our nice creative questions, like what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Christmas Vacation. Since we're in that kind of still time period, I guess. Christmas.
Nice. What's your favorite album, band?
Oh, Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, Metallica.
We're going just about full 80s, aren't we?
There we go. Nothing like 80s hair bands. They were the best.
That's right.
I remember being in grade 12 and AC/DC had just hit the scene, so they sort of. Oh, you got to change your battery pack.
Oh, look at that. I forgot to plug it in.
We're done now anyway. So.
Exactly, so I'm not worrying about it.
Okay.
I cut off.
All right, so keep your underwater housing sealed and airtight.
I will, for sure.
And keep doing what you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board. So we're going to end with our final outro, but John and I still hang out. If you want to, you can hang out and chat a bit, or you can leave, whatever works for you. So
sure, okay. I'll hang out for a little bit and just.
Okay. Any last questions there, Johnny?
No, I think we got her all. It's a very good show. I think we learned a lot.
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome.
All right. So we'll see everybody next week. And I got some irons in the fires for some new guests. So
cool.
We'll see everybody next week.
I have a list.
Later.